how are you? Hope you're fine. This is the Shy Yeti Show.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Good luck, studio.
Oh, it's the Shy Life Podcast.
Oh, there's going to be some drama ahead.
All I wanted was a pie, and then I hatched out of an egg.
Okay, bring the mic over. He's ready to record.
I see your mental condition is improving.
Is it metaphorical? Is it deep? Is it deep?
Look at the boy. He's not all that shy is right.
Blimey, Governor. It's the Shy Life Podcast.
Hello, Paul.
Quack, quack, quack.
I failure having done it.
Excellent.
682.
682.
Bonjour et bienvenue au podcast.
Hello, welcome to yet another episode of the Shy Life Podcast with me, Paul the Shy Yeti. How are you doing? Oh, I'm okay. You know, getting older. Look, this is what the episode is kind of about. My birthday twin is here, Andy, and well, let's run the theme music. And when we return, Andy will be here, and we'll be talking about. Well, I guess we want to give you some advice as well. You'll have 100 years, almost 100 years worth of wisdom in front of you or in your ears, and we'll be able to advise you on how to be a combined age of 100. Yeah. Okay, right. Let's run that theme music.
Darling, it's the Shy Life Podcast.
Good, well, it's a positive thing, Paul. The High Life, the Shy Life.
I'll go anywhere for a potato.
Delicious.
Hello, campers. Oh,
You quite like a big bang, don't you?
Good gracious. Well, that's a whopper.
Go Shy Yeti.
Oh, I hope he hasn't found out my secret. I think he has.
I love the Yeti S. It's my favorite thing.
If you thought that was bad, just listen to this.
yeah, I'm strangely drawn to Yeti Uncle John's ankles as well.
I could eat my body weight in crisps every day.
Has anyone seen my hot sausage?
It's all gooey and meaty and yum, 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 yum.
Here comes the grizzly.
It's the Shy Life Podcast.
I can't wait for it to begin.
I like that. Yeah.
Look, mommy, I'm famous.
Marvelous, Paul.
Hi there.
Andy, how are you?
Hi, I'm back again, Paul.
Oh, I know.
I'm very good.
Good. Well, I demanded that you I demanded that you be here because
Is this the third one we've done?
this is the fourth one we've done.
The fourth one?
Yeah.
Wow.
The first one was we talked about Ozzy's hopes, like 3 or 4 of them. Then we did comparing our
The
favourite
likes and
things.
dislikes, yeah.
And then we did the first episode.
Wow, of course. So this is the fourth one. And I bet out of all of your episodes, I bet that was one of the least listened to.
I know. I mean, I think it just depends.
It's niche content, isn't it? Niche content.
It's niche. But I don't know. I think it did fine. I think people are willing to jump on the Shy Life Podcast train, and some people
See
have
what
said
there is.
Yeah, some people have said that they don't know much about it, so they'll listen and then they'll know something about it. So,
there's something in it for everybody. I've found there's episodes that I've really enjoyed, and there's others that because I've not followed it much, I don't get some of the references. So I think it's for me, it's a pick and mix.
Yeah, well, that's good.
In a nice way.
Yeah. Well, I didn't want it to be about one thing though, because if you just do about one thing, then there might be just people who go, well, I don't like any of that. I'm not interested in music at all, or I'm not interested in films at all. Whereas if you do a bit of everything, they might
some of the episodes I've really enjoyed listening to is where you've chosen a year and you've gone through what was on TV in that year. I've quite enjoyed listening to some of those, particularly the ones obviously from the early 70s when we were created.
Well, I put poor Warren through it because I kind of decided that he said he was up for meeting the regulars, so I kind of thought, okay, well, we can talk about TV, but I'm going to involve him in a plot line as well. So,
no, that's good. So 100 years of wisdom. That's quite frightening, isn't it? To think that our combined ages are 100.
Yeah, wow. By the time this episode goes out, we're currently wallowing in the.
Are we into Q?
Is it that it's that? Well, we haven't quite got to the 10th of October. We've got about a month left of our 40s, but by the time this goes out, it'll either almost gone or completely gone. But
and it's a legacy stamp, isn't it? It's there then.
Yeah.
So are we pretending that we're now 50, or are we still in our 40s today?
We're at time of recording, but I'm not sure. This is either going to go out just before or just after. It depends on the schedules and how, but yeah, just.
But you see, this is the thing where the best soaps are filmed months in advance.
Yeah.
So you're stood there in your bikini like it's the middle of summer, and actually you're freezing everything off.
Happens quite a lot around here, doesn't it? Just listeners, just picture us still in our 40s. No Botox, no fillers or whatever they call it, nothing like that. We're as intended, as we were intended to be. But I was wondering if we could, I don't know, summarize our 5 decades in sort of like words or key points that you. So things.
Best memory of that decade.
Things from like between 73 and 83. In your first 10 years, what can you think of? I mean,
I think probably starting school and I can remember that we had 2 classes in each year, and we both got really young teachers. I think they were both newly qualified teachers, and they just had the most funkiest 70s clothes. Like they were both women. They both had like platform boots and flared trousers and collars that went down to their shoulders and big plastic jewelry, and just thinking, wow. And yeah, learning to read and write, and at my first school and at primary school. And actually, I met somebody recently who had been to the same junior school as me. Given that it's about 80 miles away from where I live now, it was like a bit of a shock. And to talk to him about what it was like in the late 50s. And then I thought, that's so long ago. But then actually it was the late 70s when we were there. So that's still a long time ago as well, isn't it? So probably... My most vivid memories are probably my first school in that first decade. What about you?
Well, I mean, I was lucky I went to a very small country school. So there was about 60 pupils in the whole school. That was kind of nice. And I remember generally enjoying my primary school, although I feel like around the time I was about to leave, because I was going to go to a different school from some of my friends, some of them went a bit funny on me, and that's probably was one of the first sort of negative experiences I had of how people can sort of who you used to like can suddenly turn on you for no real reason. And I guess that's partly because they were sad that we weren't going to, but not that I had any control over where I was going to go to school. But I do find a lot of it, it's very difficult for me to pick. You know, like some people remember that being young or being that sort of age really well, to the point of, oh, I remember I went to this party or I went to this, and they can tell you like what they ate that day. And to me, it's very fuzzy, things like that. It's more like little bits and pieces, or you see a photo from a party you went to when you were 5, and you're like, oh, I remember that top. But
I've got a really strong memory of it being a sunny day. I don't know where my mum was, but my dad took me for a walk, and I was really, really little, and I can remember them. They were building houses, and I said this to my dad years later, and he was like, "You can't remember that because you must have been about 2 or 3, because when they were building those houses, and all we could think of was that was the same time that my mum was learning to drive. So it was literally, if it was for me and him to be together and her not be there, and me having this memory of watching a house being built or houses being built without the roofs on, and going and walking, it really does fit with us maybe being sort of 2.5.
Yeah.
That's probably the earliest thing I can remember.
I lived in a different house, or maybe even 2 houses. I think my parents lived in one house when I was born, and then they bought the land where their current house is, and it was being built, and we moved down the road from there in a bungalow for a year whilst it was being built. But I don't remember those houses, and I also met my granddad and met my favourite great aunts, my great uncle Jim. I met there are pictures of me at my christening, so I met them, but I don't remember meeting them because they both died in like 1974. So I did technically meet my granddad, but
you've no memory of that.
And I never met my mum's dad because he died in 1967. So
I can remember. There were crisps that were tomato ketchup flavour that were like a corn snack thing that were round circles with little. Maybe they were like a space before kind of Space Raider crisps. I can remember Monkey being on BBC Two.
Yeah, I remember
on a Friday night.
Were you a child who got hypnotised by Star Wars? Because I think I didn't. I have a slight theory that I would say we were probably too young for Star Wars.
Yes.
By the time Empire Strikes Back came along,
we were a bit too old for it.
And I was into Doctor Who by then as well, and Doctor Who was never going to get beaten by Star Wars.
I think it was people who had an older brother or sister that they were into Star Wars.
Yeah.
Whenever thinking of going to people's houses. After school or in the school holidays, it was their older sister that had the Star Wars poster, or their older brother.
Yeah, and I had a cousin who had a lot of the toys. I would say he was spoiled, but he was spoiled. In that he had loads and loads of the. Whereas, back when I was a kid, you got presents on your birthday. Maybe if you're on holiday, you might get presents. You didn't get. You didn't get loads and loads of toys, and I remember. So maybe it was a bit of a sort of there's no way that I'm ever going to get that many Star Wars toys. So I don't want those Star Wars. I don't want them. I'm not interested, sort of thing. It could well have been, I would never have had. My parents would never have bought me, say, cool trainers or trendy jeans. So I cope with that by not wanting them. I don't want trendy. Why do I want trendy trainers for?
So I left junior school in summer 1982. So I've got my first year at middle school as well in this first decade. And I can remember that first year at middle school. In fact, somebody had a photograph because obviously with the birthdays coming up, some of our school year have actually already turned 50 at the time we're recording this. And there was two of the women there were two of the girls that lived on our estate that are still friends now, had put a picture up of our school photograph from that year, from 1983. And there we all are, and we're just children. We're just young children in it. And I don't remember feeling that young at the time.
What age?
When you look at it now, you think, God, they really are young children. Sorry, go on.
No, so what age do you go into middle school? Because it sounds like it's a little bit earlier than.
So we did 4 years at each school. So September 78 to summer 82, and then September 82 to summer 86.
Yeah, because I was at more like a primary school. You didn't leave until you were 11, and also in our area, you still did the 11 plus.
We didn't,
and if you didn't get in, you went to the secondary school. If you were,
it had all been reconfigured in Warwickshire by them.
Yeah, I mean, it's still.
I never really 4 years.
Yeah, I never really understand how it's so different from each region. You think that would be something that would be just sort of flattened out now, long since gone. But they still do the 11 plus in Salisbury. But
something that really stands out from that first year at first school as well was the book James and the Giant Peach.
Yeah.
I loved that book. I think I must have read it about 3 or 4 times, which when you're that age, that's quite a big thing, isn't it?
I was going to say, I found that I sort of jumped from books that were meant for children to books that weren't meant for children, probably younger than I should have done.
Right.
And also TV. I think I got to a stage where I didn't want to watch Blue Peter, or I might have want to watch Grange Hill because that was a bit more rebellious. But I wasn't. I was a bit like, this is kids. This is stuff for kids.
Yeah. So probably for me, Brookside, starting to watch that in November '82.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And
watching.
Yeah, I mean, I jumped from kids' books to like reading Agatha Christie because I like Miss Marple.
Yes.
You know, I didn't really do the. Now you have a whole genre of maybe books for teenagers. In fact, I've read some books that are for. I saw a film called Summer of '85, I think it's called, and I thought I like this. I'll read the book, and the book is actually written for teenagers, although there's nothing in it. I would say that you would know that if I hadn't been told, just that the character is a teenager. But yeah, so I probably read more books made for younger adults as an adult than I did when I was a teenager.
I think probably most of my memories of that first decade are quite positive. My spending time with, I was an only child, spending time with my grandparents. For one set of grandparents, I was their only grandchild as well. So there was probably a lot of time spent with them and quite happy times. And I think my memories from that era, from those first 10 years, are probably all quite happy and quite, I suppose, learning about things, learning about the world. I remember the Yorkshire Ripper being arrested. And being interested in a little bit in what was that about? What was this thing that all the adults were talking about that I didn't really understand, and realising that these hideous crimes had happened over the last 5 or 6 years and people had been murdered, and wanting to find out more and wanting to learn about stuff.
Because that's where they make a mistake. They don't want to bother kids with serious things like that, and yet they don't realise that through the grapevine of school gossip, you do find out about these things, but sometimes you hear the wrong version. I remember I don't think there's been that many murders in Salisbury, but there was when I was at school, and we had to do cross-country runs near, it happened in a park, and we had to run through that park, and it became a bit like the bogeyman type thing where, but I don't know if I ever really knew the full story about what happened, or whether the person had been found, had been arrested or what. But
we had something like a hostage situation one afternoon, and a woman and her son were held hostage by a gunman in their own house. And even for years afterwards, when I went down that part of town to that particular street, it would be back in my mind, because I think when you're quite young, events like that seem to affect you more or stick in your mind more. And for probably most of the people in the town I lived in, they'd have forgotten about it, but it was still in my memory that hostage thing had happened on, and it was one afternoon out of 1 year. So even for people on the same street, they'd have forgotten about it, but it was always in my mind. Probably
sort of gone slightly into our next decade by this point, anyway. But are there other things from between the age of 10 and 20 that's a big change. That's a big area of change.
It was, and it I mean, on a sad note, my granddad died in 1984, so that's kind of at the start of that block, or that season. So that changed things. Experiencing a bereavement in my family was quite a big thing, and starting high school in '86. Thinking about what did I want to do with my life as well. I think that was probably, I suppose, as you start to move towards becoming a teenager, and you start to have interests in things and think about who you are. You start thinking who you are as a person and what you want your identity to be. And do you want to be with the cool kids, or do you want to mess around, or do you want to be academic and do well at your exams and hopefully try and progress to university and all those types of decisions, and choosing GCSEs and how much of it is your choice and how much is your parents influencing you? And I suppose a lot of it's that.
I got sent to a private school for 2 years because my parents wanted me to do. They wanted me to do. I didn't pass my 11 plus, and they wanted me to try the 13 plus. So I went to this school, which I hated for 2 years because I just came from a little primary school, and all of the kids in that school had been privately educated from the start. I didn't have to go into boarding school, but it was a boarding school. You did sport every day. I just hated it. I haven't got any. I haven't really got any friends from that time. From that particular school. It taught me, if anything, it was a bit of a life lesson. It taught me taught me bad things. It taught me how to get out of games, or how to fake being ill, or how to sort of duck and dive and not be caught if you'd skive games. And because I was a bit of a goody two shoes, I got away with it because I was quite good. That's not really a good thing, but yeah, I mean,
I think as well, kind of memories of doing my GCSEs as well, and I was a prefect in our last year, and I can remember we were so badly behaved. Those of us that were in like the last year at school when we were doing our GCSEs, we all got a trip. We were the first year in donkey's years where they didn't do it because we were so badly behaved, and I can just remember being a prefect and being in the prefect's room, and we had the music turned up too loud, and we would be late for lessons. And I still did really well at my GCSEs, but I think maybe I was beginning to get a bit more of a rebellious streak then, or a bit more of a not wanting to conform so much.
Yeah, I kind of had a little group of friends. They would probably say, no, you weren't the leader, but I was the leader in that I had a bit more experience than my two main friends. And there were a few others who, each of our form years had to do an assembly. They went round in a loop, and I always took over what our class did because I liked doing that. And I had a little band of actors who were also sort of my friends, but not my best friends. And then I had my two best friends. And I don't really remember, who were the cool kids, because it was just, those are the sporting people. I'm not really interested in them. Let's do what we want to do. Because I had my pen pals that I got from the Doctor Who magazine. And so I started writing to people in about 88, 89. And then, by 1990, I was allowed to go and visit them in London. And I started going up to London. And I had older friends who were Doctor Who fans, but they weren't leading me astray or anything. They were kind of, they were just interested in Doctor Who. There was no sort of, maybe that was the interest. Maybe they did go to nightclubs, but they didn't try and influence me to go with them at that stage. But it was still good to have. And one of my best friends, I'm not really a religious person, but my dad is. And one of my friends was also kind of religious, although it wasn't something that brought into our friendship. But my dad knew that he went to church. And so my dad is sort of, Nick's okay because he goes to church and he's responsible. So I was allowed to go with them to London and stuff, even when I was sort of 16 and they were in their early 20s, which is a big age gap for a lot at that stage. But
probably as well, coming from a smaller town, going to a big city like that was quite a big thing, wasn't it?
Well, I remember going to London and Nick getting lost trying to find the sci-fi shop. And I had to sort of take over, and suddenly I had a better sense of direction. I managed to, particularly at that age, and I was able to find it. So you didn't feel like, the older people were necessarily more competent than you. You all had your own skills, and it was nothing to do with age that made you just because you were older didn't mean to say you had a better sense of direction. But maybe that person was good at something else, and maybe the younger person was actually the person who knew you better. So it was.
I've got really good memories of going over to Birmingham on the train to go to the shops to look at records and CDs and clothes, and just seeing a whole different way of life over there in the big city, and more of an urban life, and realising that there was a lot more beyond the town that I lived in. I got my nose pierced in 1991. Obviously the big thing, finding Prisoner, watching all of that in the late 80s and early 90s, and then going to university. So I suppose this kind of age 10 to 20, it is a massive shift in life, but it does kind of take us up to 1993, doesn't it? And we're adults by then.
And then sort of our third decade between 20 and 30, that's, you're finishing university or getting your degree, and then sort of jobs.
I had a year off and then starting work and buying a house a year later. So that takes us to 2003, doesn't it? So that was when I moved here. So so for me, that third decade is all about leaving university, going back home, leaving home again, buying my first house, starting work, being an adult and living that life, and obviously going through the millennium and surviving the millennium bug as we all did.
Yeah, I got the flat that I'm in now. I got that in 2000, so it was a little bit later for me, but I was still one of the first people of my friend group to get their own place, and it pushed my friend Harry to do the same thing. Because
I lived with students for a year. I was the only one working, and they were all art students, and that was an interesting year. Yeah. From coming back from university, getting a job in the neighbouring city in Coventry and moving over there and house sharing with students that were a couple of years younger than me that were doing their kind of art degrees. That was interesting. They go into their art shows and they were constantly drunk, and you'd come home, whole living room would have been rearranged into an art installation, and you'd think, what have I walked into? And everything had been repainted and the sofas were all different colours. And
I was sort of behind with things like drinking. I didn't go to pubs and stuff until I went into my first year at university. I never went with friends when I was in sixth form, and partly because this is why I also say I was sort of the leader of my little group, because, you know, if somebody else had been the leader and they wanted to go, they would have said, well, we're going, you don't have to come. But I remember on our leaving, we had our school leaving do it at sixth form. We had a thing at the school with the teachers there, and then a load of people were going to a pub, and I covered my kind of fear of what you do in a pub to going, I don't really want to go with the group. Like, why don't we just do something as a three now? You know, we don't have to go with these people. We're not going to ever see those people again. And my two friends agreed, and we did our own thing. But I think at least one of them would have quite liked to.
I didn't learn to drive until I was in my late 20s. I was quite late learning to drive, and I can remember everybody else could drive that was my peer group, and I can remember thinking, if I don't do it now, I never will. And my goal was to pass my test before I was 30, and I managed it. I managed it, I think, with about 11 months to spare. But kind of learning to drive as well, that was probably the one of the big things from that decade.
I should have done that when I was about that age, because I didn't have many peers that drove. I don't have many friends at all that smoke, so I never got influenced into smoking. And I never had many friends who drove, so I never particularly cared about driving. And for years, that didn't really matter. Going to university in Birmingham, buses are fine. Living near a railway station and commuting to London. I wouldn't drive into London to work, because you wouldn't be anywhere to park in central London. So I never did, but I kind of wish I had when I was about in my late 20s, because certainly also since I've been unwell, it would have been helpful to at least have, if not myself, be able to drive, then just like hospital appointments and things like that, or to have a partner or at least a friend just down the road who drive, it would make a big difference. But that's not the way it's worked out. But
so probably that hitting 30, where are we now? 2003. That was when I decided that it was time to move north again, because I'd enjoyed university up here. But I knew I didn't want to go back to the northeast, because I just felt that Yorkshire had got more opportunities. So moving into the fourth decade, if we're ready to do that now, 30 to 40. So the previous for me is like part one, growing up, buying the house, starting to work, learning to drive. Probably when I was, they do say, don't they, that men don't really mature till they turn 30. So for me, part two really does probably start when I moved up here. And then this is where it gets a bit complex, because in some ways, the last 2 decades feel a bit more the same to me.
It's been a bit different for me, because I almost felt like I was a little bit behind, and things like going clubbing and discovering clubs in London where you could actually dance to music that I liked, rather than the horrible clubs I've been to, or not, you know, where you were the DJ just played whatever was in the charts at the time. I also meeting more people, and you know, in the 90s I was making silly movies and not really addressing sort of partners and having, you know, I was just kind of being silly and hanging out with friends. And that was my Sex in the City years with a naughty. Yeah, there was more going on for me in my 30s than there had been in my 20s. And
see, for me, it's the other way around. I was probably up to more in my 20s than I was in my 30s. Because by the time I'd moved up here, I felt, I don't know, not exhausted, but I kind of felt like I'd done a lot of stuff, like partying and going to nightclubs, and I'd done all that in Birmingham, and I'd experienced it all. And
I think for me, the internet made a big difference, because I would have been quite sort of scared of going to a club unless I was going with a friend. I think I would have been a bit scared about meeting people without having seen their CV effectively beforehand, or, you know, I need to know what their favourite music is, or make sure they know everything bad about me, so that they're not going to suddenly. I'd usually try and I'd be the reverse of somebody who would exaggerate their assets. I'd probably want them to know all the negative things possibly, so that then if they did want to go out with me, then they kind of knew they sort of knew the negative things.
Because probably in the previous in the previous season, when we were in our 20s, I had email. I think my first job, I had an email address, 96, 97, but the internet was rubbish. It was that dial-up thing, and you could only be on it for a certain period of time before it knocked you off, and it was slow, and there wasn't really much to look at for me, and it didn't really pick up and take off probably until the early 2000s. Isn't that next decade, isn't it?
Yeah, and there were sort of sites which weren't pushing. They weren't necessarily, you're on here to meet somebody for sure. As a partner, you might just be a place for you to meet friends who are like-minded.
Yes.
And that made a difference, because it was a little bit less intense. And I would kind of ultimately would like to meet somebody who I would be friendly with, even if it turned into something more. And that became, you know, you didn't have to, if you met someone for the first time, you could already have been talking to them for weeks and weeks beforehand. And that's more me than kind of just showing up. And, I never knew when people were interested in me anyway. I remember going to the Retro Bar to some karaoke, and I was laughing with this guy about how bad some of it was. And we decided we'd meet up and go to Popstars. And I stayed back at his house and at his flat afterwards and slept on the sofa. And I never really knew whether he was interested in me beyond that. I mean, I would never have, and I presume not, even though he was super handsome. I would never have presumed that, you know, I would presume that if he was interested, he'd have made a move.
Something would have happened, yeah.
Yeah, but maybe he was waiting for me to make the move, or maybe I was right. I would never know.
And you're probably right. You're probably right, but I think it's that's something that I can relate to that, and having been in situations where waiting for the other person, and they were probably waiting for you, and nothing happened, and it's a missed opportunity.
Yeah, certainly. If I'd been asked, "Are you interested?" I'd have said yes, but I wouldn't have ever sort of put myself through the humiliation of him going, "Oh no, just friends." And that was somebody I met in real life, which is why meeting online, you could get that done in an email or over a chat, a conversation, and you could establish whether there was more to it than just friends. But when you meet people in real life, it can be a bit more hard.
And I think back then people were more honest and more open on the internet when it first became a thing. I think now people are a lot more guarded about what they say, and you see people on their Instagram profile where they're only showing you one side of what they do, and they're always in the glamorous place and dressed in a certain way, and they're projecting an image of what they want to be. Because I think back then it was a bit more naive, and it was a bit more, people would maybe say too much, but they were a lot more open about things and describing who they were and what they liked and what they didn't like. And I think it was probably easier to connect with people then, because there was that more openness and honesty. They weren't trying to be somebody that they're not.
I think I remember my between 30 and 40 fondly, because between 40 and 50 there's been ill health going on pretty much on and off. So I have still done things, and I have still managed to do creative things, but there have definitely been more. It's been the hardest decade for me. So yeah, luckily though, I've got the sort of memory where I'll remember the best bits, and I won't remember the bad stuff quite so much.
I think probably the last decade of my life, because I moved house again. That was 2012. So that's kind of like coming to it is almost like a 10-year cycle in your life, isn't it? Every 10 years things change. So I moved here in 2003, and I think 2012 was when I bought this house. And Heidi came to live with us. So that's been very different, being a pet owner for the last decade.
Deal.
And also back to Prisoner again. That was this 2006, 2007. That was when the Prisoner DVDs started being released, and realising that I could reconnect with that programme again after all these years. And
I had a lot of tapes that I recorded, because I kept the tapes my mum did me, and I had, a significant amount of Sons of Daughters episodes. Not that I was sitting there. I had them, and I knew they were there, but how often I watched them, that's debatable. But I did have them if I wanted them. I mean, I remember there being a Prisoner. I can see it from here, actually. I've still got. They released a little box set of all the best episodes of Prisoner.
They did, didn't they? But there was only like 10 episodes on each.
Yeah, probably
in each box set.
Yeah.
So probably this last decade has been more around, I suppose, just living my life. But for me, there's a lot more overlap between the last 2 decades. I'd be hard pushed to remember things. I think for me, moving to Yorkshire in the early 2000s, that feels like a very different part of my life to what had come before. So, and it's a lot less. I can't say yes, that was the first decade or that was the second decade. I've got to think, which house was I in at the time? And I can't believe that's it. Here we are at 50.
I was also thinking what we ought to do is, along the way, sort of the opposite of Room 101.
Yes.
Listeners who don't know, Room 101 is about subjects that it's to do with 1984, isn't it? I think, and that putting things in Room 101 are putting things they don't like in those rooms and sort of banishing them. I think that's right. And we want to do the opposite. We want to kind of, it's almost like we're making a care package for if we get, if they decide that, now we've reached a certain age, we're going to be jettisoned down to space. We want to take a few things with us that will be sort of comfort to us. But and although there might be things that one of us likes more than the other, as long as the other one is at least happy for the thing to go in our spacecraft or whatever it is, then that would be fine. I mean, for a start, cats and dogs will be coming with us, because we both but you you're more a dog person, but you have, did you say last time you have had history with cats?
I've not good history with cats. I don't mind cats. I do have a slight allergy to them.
Yeah,
they make me sneeze and itch, but the longer I'm around them, the less it is an issue. But I don't dislike them.
Yeah, so I have to. And you couldn't.
I think they're really cute, and I would have one if it wasn't for my allergies. But with dogs, I think I've always felt more of a dog person than a cat person. But every pet is different. I've got a dog who is aloof. She won't come downstairs when you come home. You have to go to her. You put the best food down for her. She won't eat it. Then she finds a chip that someone's walked over from McDonald's, and that's what she wants. And she's not a typical dog, really.
Yeah, she's not a typical dog, are you? Deals was cuddling his teddy bear. Well, it wasn't actually his teddy bear. It's just a teddy bear that happens to be in my bed that I use as a pillow sometimes. And no matter how many pillows I have in my bed, I always need more, because they always somehow vanish in the night. And anyway, I found Dealey sort of tried to climb on me, and then sort of slipped sideways off me because I wasn't really awake. And he sort of landed on this teddy bear, and which he decided was nice and cuddly, and then stretched his arms around him, and we're getting really
so Paul, our first thing is pillows. I like a lot of pillows as well, I think we would have to take a big bin liner full of nice comfy pillows with us when we go for our care package. Definitely. I've reached the point now where when I'm going away, I'm thinking, am I going to take my memory foam pillow with me just to be comfortable?
I mean, I've just been away. Well, I think you've just been away as well. But where I went, the hotel, I went with a school friend, so he didn't want to share a twin room. Some hotels, it's quite difficult to even get a single room. But this hotel, because it was an old style one, did have single rooms, but they were made for like it was like a doll's house or something. The single bed was
young children.
Yeah, the single bed was terminally single, and it was, you know, you were kind of like, because I have to wear a CPAP mask anyway, so it was like, how do I get? When do I put the mask on? Because I haven't got much space on this bed. Do I put it on and then try and get in bed, or do I try and? But I'm facing the wrong. The only way to sleep in it is facing away from. It's just a nightmare, and because it was also against the wall, that there was less space to. I couldn't spread over both sides of the bed. It was just. I was only there for 3 nights, because it took until about the third night to even manage to sleep for more than an hour or so. But you get used to your own bed, and then it's quite difficult to. I did stay at a friend's house back in the summer, and he had the most comfortable bed. He had the most comfortable bed that I've experienced in years. I sort of was considering sticking it in my backpack and leaving with it.
Taking it with you.
Yeah, I was like, your bed is far too comfortable. I need to sleep on this bed all the time. How do you find when you go on holiday and stuff? Do you get used to new bed, or does it take you half the holiday just to get used to the...
Well, I'm not the best sleepers anyway. The slightest noise wakes me up, and then I just can't get back to sleep. I was actually okay this time. We'd got we were in it was like an old converted barn thing in a town centre in North Yorkshire. When I say like a converted barn, it was more like the back of some old house that had been I don't know, maybe some kind of annex where they put the animals or something years ago, and it was converted into a holiday let. But the rest of the building was pretty much dilapidated and unused, so it was really quiet. So although we were right in the middle of the town centre, we were kind of down this back alleyway round the back of this big old building that was all boarded up. So it was really quiet, and really, really peaceful. So I slept okay as well as I thought I could. I don't usually have a problem when I'm away. I probably sleep better when I'm away than I do when I'm at home.
Yeah. It just depends, because I have a bed that I sleep in when I visit my parents, and I can have an okay night in that, or I can have sort of a bad night. I'm not sure whether it's somewhere under. I'm not sure whether it used to be a put you up bed, or sort of temporary bed that's now there the whole time, because it's not a sofa bed, but it doesn't have a proper headboard.
That would drive me mad.
Yeah, that can be a problem, because things end up slipping down, or the bed ends up slightly pushing away from the wall, and then you lose all your pillows down the back.
I think it depends why you're away as well. I think if you're on holiday and you're nicely relaxed and you've just arrived, I don't know, in some lovely destination, and you've got a wonderful hotel room, and the linen's all fresh, and the mini bar's there, and you can open the curtains and look at the ocean and the palm trees and whatever, and still be in somewhere like Solihull, then if it's the right ambience, I think that helps me sleep. It helps me relax more, and I have got a bad back, but I think I think sometimes it's more to do with how relaxed I am, how well I sleep, depending on where I am. Well, because sometimes I can have a shocking night at home, and then the next night sleep perfectly well.
I definitely. The friend I went with, I definitely couldn't have shared a room with, because he's sort of like a turning the lights out at 9 o'clock type person. I'm like, I can't go to bed until at least midnight, unless I'm really tired. Sometimes later. Particularly now, I don't have a sort of a strict work schedule, but definitely. So,
cocoa before bed, hot milk.
I wouldn't say no. I don't often do it these days, but certainly sometimes when I'm visiting friends, they offer it me. I always accept it.
Right. It's not something I've really ever had or done. I usually just drink water or fizzy pop or something before bed.
Yeah, it really
hot
depends.
Drinks before bed, it's not something that's really ever appealed to me.
Yeah, I'm not very good at. I've made a coffee here, but I made it when I made my lunch, and because Dilly sat on me,
I've not been able to eat or drink.
I've managed to eat, but I haven't drunk the coffee. But I think I made it too strong anyway, so I'll probably drink it like it's a iced coffee later on. Although it won't really be an iced coffee. But I'm not going to throw it away because it's got cold. I'm not going to bother me microwaving it. So I'm kind of used.
So perhaps we could have some pre-bedtime drinks.
Yes, yeah. I wouldn't say no. So other things we
what might want to take with us. We'd definitely have to take the Prisoner DVDs.
Yes, yeah.
Or a streaming device. Now that it's available on streaming on My5, how fantastic is that?
Yeah, I keep meaning to start it, but I don't, because I'm doing the editing of the podcast. I don't have that much time, and I try and watch Neighbours and an episode of Home and Away when I have my lunch. But I mean, watching Neighbours is easier than watching Home and Away because the amount of adverts you have to get through on Channel 5 compared to Freebie,
it's quite, and they're all the same, aren't they? Over and over again. I'm sick of seeing the same adverts over and over again. Streaming services, if you're listening to this, you need to rotate your advert cycle because it's crazy. I already know that you want me to have a McDonald's or lie on a whatever mattress. Sponsored by whatever mattress.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I'll have a McDonald's when I'm going to have a McDonald's.
When I'm ready for it, yeah.
I'm not going to have it randomly in the middle of the week when I'm not going out of the house.
But no, the other day was perfect. I was somewhere and I'd got my phone and my headphones, and the person I was meeting was late, and I was like, do you know what? I'm just going to sit and watch an episode of Prisoner. And I got halfway through one, which was fantastic. I had a really good internet connection where I was, so I was just sat there with my headphones on, pretending I was working.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to start. But I've got a few shows going on at the moment which are just limited. Like I'm watching the second series of the Sex and the City reboot, and but that's only 11 episodes, so I'm nearly there. So I just need to sort of have the time beyond watching the things that are on continuously, like the two soaps. But if you're taking Prisoner, then which I obviously approve of, I'll be taking Sons and Daughters. So we've got
yes, I totally agree. So we can flip flop between them.
Yeah.
At the moment, I'm also I've got the first 8 volumes of Cop Shop on DVD, and I'm on volume 7.
Yeah.
So I've only just started watching that. So I've still got probably about another month or so. That'll probably take me up to Christmas. And I'm also watching Brookside as well on STV Player at the moment. And I've got to about episode 170, which it's been interesting watching Brookside from the beginning, because I can remember watching it when it first started back in, was it 1982 when Channel 4 started? I can really remember coming home from school and watching that first evening of Channel 4, because it was a bit of a thing, wasn't it, to get a fourth TV channel?
Yeah, I don't quite know how soon we got it either. I don't know whether we got it immediately or whether we had to wait.
Right, we did. We had it straight away on day one. And Countdown was the first programme. Can't remember what the conundrum was, but I do remember Brookside starting, and I think probably for about the first 20-30 episodes, because one of the characters dies in bed, and you've got one of those situations where someone wakes up and finds that their husband has died in the night beside them, and that was quite shocking for a how old would we have been then? 9. That was quite shocking for a 9-year-old to see a dead body on TV, and that's always stayed with me over the years. I've always had memories of that. But now the episodes that I'm watching now, I really don't remember them at all. Little bits and pieces I can remember, but it's interesting watching the early 80s stuff.
The weird thing about Channel 4 is that I've seen bits of Channel 4 that people videoed at the time. Before I sort of started watching it myself, because they used to show or repeat the Avengers quite early on. So I've seen tapes people recorded at the time of the Avengers, and they at a stage when they didn't even have advertising on Channel 4 because they hadn't yet got the money through. So it just kind of goes to an advert break, and then just kind of nothing much happens, and then it comes back again because they still had to kind of keep that hour slot, even though they hadn't quite got the arrangements in place for the advertising. That was very strange. That must have been very early on that was the case.
Yeah, definitely. So you didn't get Channel 4 straight away?
Don't think so. But also, I suppose it would have been a bit of a case of like, what would I have been watching on there anyway, sort of thing. I can't really remember, how much we were left in charge of the TV controller, sort of thing, or what I really watched. I mean, the trouble is, in the early 80s, when Peter Davison was the Doctor in Doctor Who, it was on in the week rather than Saturday nights.
Yes, it was, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and they were. What I know now is that they were using that as a trial to see if people would watch. It was almost a trial for EastEnders in that they were trying to see if people would come back twice a week and watch the show. Even though the two shows are no way compared. But that used to annoy me because my parents made me do like some music practice and also Cub Scouts, which I didn't really like because I wasn't really a very social kid in that way, or not just being with my selected friends, fair enough, but not with just a load of horrible, smelly boys. I like to select my company, not just be stuck with a load of boys expecting to play football. So.
While we've been talking, I've been looking at my TV transmitter guide, and it tells me that your area, I don't think you got Channel 4 until July 1983. So that was about maybe 9 months after everybody else.
Yeah. We were late. We were late with things like starting Prisoner and stuff like that because they never actually finished showing Prisoner in the TBS region. Because
I was still at school. I've got really strong memories. I had to look it up, but it was 1988. I know we've mentioned this before, but so 1988 would have been the summer holidays before we went into our penultimate year at school. Yeah, assuming that I'm kind of, well, I suppose like the last 2 years of school that were GCSE years, they're like the serious years, aren't they? Yeah. So it was the summer holidays before, and I think the Scott and Charlene wedding had happened, and there were people at school talking about staying up late to watch Prisoner, and I thought, well, I will, but I didn't get round to it until the school summer holidays that year. So, and it finished in 1990 in the Midlands, so or was it 91? But it was pretty much done by the time we were doing A-levels.
I know by, say, summer of 92, before I went to university, my American pen friend came over, and it was just after the Dr. Peterson stuff with Sandy, and I so we were in about late 1981 episodes. In mid 1992, and it was one of those things where it's been very exciting, and then they just have a couple of episodes which were a little bit more quieter, and I showed it. I was like, you have to see this, to my American pen friend, and he was kind of like, nothing's happening. I was so embarrassed.
For them. For us, by then, Prisoner was just, it was a memory. And thinking about the things that have changed in our lives, I think that's something that's really significant. Now, you and I can just, well, within reason, can watch whatever we want and just stream it or buy the DVD. But back then, you really couldn't. And when things finished, that was it. It was done. It was forgotten about by a lot of people. It was a memory. It was... there may have been some people who recorded stuff on VHS that they could kind of pass them around, but in the main, once it was shown, it was done, wasn't it? And I think that's something that's very different now.
Because the whole time I was at university, my mum was recording Prisoner for me, And when I got to Birmingham, it was when they were showing. They just decided to start from the beginning again.
It started up again then, didn't it?
Yeah, but I don't know how long.
See, I think they only showed the first year because that's right. Because just as I went off to uni, just as you arrived in the Midlands and I was leaving, that was when they decided to start it again on Central. But I think they only maybe did the first sort of 90 episodes or something. I think they got through the end of year one cliffhanger with the gunshot and the all the blood everywhere, which really did look like tomato ketchup. But
I don't even remember. I think I had so bad TV reception because I was living in a well, it wasn't a shared house. I was living with a family as their student, and I just had a sort of aerial type TV with an aerial pinned in. I don't think I had and they must have had decent TV downstairs, but I don't think there was a proper plug upstairs for me to plug in. So I don't even know how often I watched because the TV reception was so bad and it was pretty late to stay up. If it was that bad, so it was a bit later before I actually got to see those episodes properly. But.
Does your time at university seem a long time ago now? Then,
yeah, I guess it does, and I'm sort of aware of how long ago it was when I see all that because I've got all of my second part videos.
Yes, that's from that era, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's this fresh-faced child on screen who doesn't look much like me, but
that feels like a lifetime ago for me.
Yeah, it's weird having access to so much of it. Although what I do have access to is a strange fantasy version of where I'm hunting out evil jelly monsters in Southern Park. And,
see, for me, I feel like my life's been in two parts. Part one was kind of growing up as a child, going away to university up in Sunderland, living up there, experiencing that, coming back to my parents afterwards, 95, starting work, doing a job, buying my first house. That was kind of like part one. And then part two was thinking, actually, I enjoyed it up north and I want to be back up north. So kind of part two for me, the last 20 years has been since I relocated up here. And I feel like my life is very different in part two.
I almost have come full circle because in some things, in that I always did writing and stuff. I mean, trouble is, some people will talk about jobs and stuff, and that's all the stuff that's in the background. To me, I always think about what I was doing creatively or what I was. That was what doing jobs was the thing I did to keep me going, so I could do other things. But and I always sort of did writing at school, but then when I went to university, I had my video camera, so I did a lot of video stuff. But then in the noughties, I did a lot of writing, and then self-publishing became a lot easier, and I started doing my silly poems more and not very much visual stuff. And then just a chance sort of purchase of a camera, but at the point where cameras also could video or digital cameras, they weren't just even ones from 10, 15 years ago were a bit more than just a camera. They were a video camera effectively. And I started doing my videos of my poetry as I traveled on holiday and stuff. So that sort of came back full circle. But then doing the podcast, I've gone back to doing the improvisation and the characters and like effectively Southern Park on audio, except that it's not about Southern Park that often. It's about what I'm doing now, but so I kind of think it's a shame I didn't do more video stuff in the noughties. It would be nice to have more. I've got more digital stuff or more photos of me in the 90s than I do from the noughties almost, because digital cameras are pretty rubbish certainly in the first years of the noughties.
Whereas the analog stuff from previous years, you've been able to convert and still.
Yeah, I've been able to take stills from the video. Well, we've converted the the video into digital, and then I can take stills off them quite easily now.
I think we mentioned this when we spoke before, and we probably did, and this just shows our age as well, doesn't it? But I do think there is this risk, isn't there? Because we both like to look back at stuff and reminisce and watch stuff from previous years and relive things, you think kind of what was it that you're doing at this time now? Does that make sense? Because we've got this nostalgia thing of everybody's watching all these old soap operas from years ago. You've kind of lost your current stuff, because I've got to say, current TV, music, films, I'm very not interested in it. There's very little content that's coming out now that's new, that's fresh, that I'm interested in watching or listening to.
I've kind of got one or two younger friends who have kept me in touch with music a bit more. And once you start going, oh, I like that person, things like YouTube will sort of say, oh, you might like this person. So I probably know more about some music, not necessarily chart-topping music, but music by quite young people who you think, well, I don't really understand why this isn't in the charts, than I did, say, in the mid-noughties. So, in the mid-teens. So, yeah, I do kind of... TV I'm less bothered with because there's so much reality stuff. And, I mean, I do watch shows on Netflix, or I watched something the other week called The Wilderness. It was on Prime. The only reason I watched it was a thriller. So I like psychological thrillers. I'll often watch psychological thrillers, and this had Jenna Coleman, who played Clara in Doctor Who with Matt Smith and Peter Capaldi, and I always liked her in Doctor Who, and that was probably one of those situations where you kind of actually she was still good in it, but I don't think the story had enough to drag it out for 6 episodes. And ultimately I'm kind of like, I don't think any of the characters were particularly nice. The ending was a bit unsatisfactory.
Something when I have watched more recent stuff, I feel that a lot of drama that's made now is led by the cast, as in they've got a name of somebody that was in a soap opera, someone that's quite well respected, that's been in lots of stuff, and it almost becomes a vehicle for them as this is what's going to draw the audience in, that such and such a person is in it because she's just left Coronation Street and this is her first thing since Coronation Street, or he's such a well-known actor, we've got him in it. And actually their part in the show is more important than the story almost. It's almost like the celebritization of drama. And I don't like that. I don't like it.
No, it can also backfire because you might really hate. You might go, oh, not them from Coronation Street.
Absolutely.
Oh, no.
And some of the stuff I've watched, even I like a lot of true crime stuff, and even where they've made, I suppose, dramatizations of some of the most kind of biggest kind of serial killer cases and stuff, where they've brought someone in that was in EastEnders. You think they're more focused on that part because that's the actress that's playing that part, and it's like she's the star. But actually, in the real story, her element was really insignificant. Well, she's maybe just the policewoman trying to solve the case.
Well, they've done that with the new Neighbours, because there's an American actress who was in the OC or something, which I never watched, and it's a big deal that a Hollywood actress is in Neighbours. But I don't want to be rude. You wouldn't know that she was, compared to Carmen Susan or some of the other regulars on Neighbours.
She means nothing to us.
She means nothing to us, but her acting isn't as good as a lot of the. It does make me wonder if, when Guy Pearce has come back to Neighbours, whether he's had to act in a different way to fit back in. Acting in movies must be different to acting in a soap.
I don't mind that so much. I don't mind them bringing back people who've been in it previously, because I think that unless it's wasn't the one recently, was it EastEnders where they brought back? I think, is it Cindy, and she was supposed to be dead?
Yeah, I read about it.
I just remember keep seeing the trailer where she was. Oh my God, aren't you dead? I don't mind that so much, but I think it's when they bring someone in who, like you've said, is a celebrity from another program. they get the bill in, but actually their character and their acting ability doesn't fit with the rest of the story. I just think it loses the quality of the story for me.
I mean, I'm not for many reasons, I'm not a big fan of Tom Cruise, but I did see a film of his recently, and I was thinking, my goodness, how much does this man get paid? And his acting is below par for an episode of EastEnders. It's not that good.
I can remember thinking that about Michael Douglas as well, that he would get a film, and it was because it was his film, and it was like they were using his name to hope that people would go and see it. But actually, it's just the same story. Elderly man manages to be attractive to all these young women and can do all these action shots when clearly the guy's in his 60s. And they've clearly got stunt doubles for everything that's more than him just walking around. So it just becomes a bit of a joke, doesn't it? Sorry, Michael, if you're listening and if you've got lots of fans, and you're probably going to get legal action now, Paul. Sorry.
No, we're allowed to criticise their acting. Just because we can. Yeah. I mean, I've often said that one of my favourite actors is my friend Toppy from the Smellcast. Because I just think he's very good at improvisation, and it's always a pleasure to improvise with him. I find it very difficult to kind of, when am I seeing good acting? Because I often think I see good acting on some of these soaps, sort of Home and Away. They've just got really, I think, they've got some really good people on there. There's nobody who seems wooden, I don't think. The whole cast is really, I just find them very watchable. And then you think, I mean, I love that Guy Pearce came back to Neighbours, and also I like that he came back again when they discovered it was going to continue, and he was like, well, we kind of did something in the last episode, and we kind of need to undo it again. So
is he back for?
He's back.
Obviously, nothing's permanent, but is he back for quite a while?
No, I don't think so. I think he's just back to sort of work out what's going on. We don't quite know. We don't know what they're going to do, but obviously, he can't stay on it for months and months. So, but I still appreciate that he took the time to do that, and it's just weird when you're told, oh, here's so-and-so actor or actress from this so-and-so program, and then you're not really aware of them at all, and they come in and you think, gosh, I couldn't tell that this person was a famous actor. If I didn't know any of these people, I wouldn't go, she's clearly from Hollywood. I think a lot of actors are lucky and find themselves in high-profile shows that maybe suits their acting talent, but then asked to do a different role in a different show a few years later, then maybe they haven't got the range to I mean, sometimes that can be in the writing as well. But
it's changed as well, isn't it, over the years? Because probably 20, 30 years ago, if they'd asked somebody quite big to come back to something that they'd been in before, they just wouldn't have done it. But now that people have got that knowledge that actually there are a lot of people like us that sit and watch old episodes of things and reminisce about how good it was, and I think maybe there's more of it's more acceptable to come back and perhaps do stuff now than it would have been 10, 15 years ago, maybe. And
I think that happens a lot in Doctor Who, where there's people who don't realise how much money can be made from conventions or from or audio dramas that. I mean, they've done audio dramas for the last 25 years before the show came back with a lot of the cast in. But there were some cast who didn't want to be involved to start with. But it's noticeable that somewhere along the way, Tom Baker realised actually it was worth doing it. And Christopher Eccleston, who didn't necessarily leave on the best terms, he does conventions now and he does audio dramas. So it might be that other actors have kind of said, it's worth doing. I remember Peter Davison saying years ago that doing a few conventions, particularly American ones, that would be your summer holidays. That would
paid for, yeah.
Yeah, paid for. Yeah. So it's worth doing these things just to and you get to see people as long as you don't have lots of people you don't want to see. It should be you should be treated quite well as well, and have your flights paid for and your hotel paid for.
Anyway,
should be a nice experience.
Back to our
yes. What about
jetting off into space care package? What other types of things would you like us to take with us?
Well, we need to take some music, and we know we agree on quite a lot of music anyway.
Yeah, I don't think there'd be any issues there.
And we found out last time that we had some favourites like the B-52s.
And actually, with streaming, if we could take our streaming devices with us, we wouldn't have a problem with music, because I'm sure we could find stuff that we both liked. And if we didn't, I could introduce you to some stuff, you could introduce me to stuff, and I think we'd both be quite open to listening to that. So I don't think we'd have a problem with music.
Yeah.
What about food? How about food?
Food, I like most of it. So
you're a bit of a sweet tooth, aren't you?
Less and less though, because
less and less.
I only because I find that some things that I used to like are too sweet now. And that could be the recipe change, or it could be my taste buds have changed.
I think it's recipe changed. I watched a thing probably about a year ago where they was it 1970s recipes? They made a load of products the way that they used to be back in the 70s, and people were disgusted by them because there was a lot more salt in them, a lot less sugar, and some of the products were less. Because there was so much salt in them, they were actually really bad for you.
Yeah.
Things like bread and sauces and things like ketchup and stuff were just full of salt and were actually quite bad for you. But some of the stuff is worse for you now because they've increased the sugar content. And people were really shocked at how different things tasted.
I'm still always moaning about how it's very difficult just to get like a basic orange squash that hasn't got fake sugar. And I don't need to have my orange squash super strong, but I don't want to have something with aspartame in which has got that horrible aftertaste. I just want to have orange squash. And it's harder and harder. There are fewer and fewer companies that, because of the sugar tax and stuff. But I'd rather pay an extra 50p for, I know one or two companies that make just old-fashioned orange squash. But it's become almost quite niche, and if anything,
can you remember? I think it was it Kiora, and that used to be a different shade of orange from all of the other squashes. And I'm on about probably back in the early 80s. It was a much more carroty colour, whereas a lot of the squashes now they tend to be more yellowish, the orange ones. And this was more of it was probably chemicals. That's probably why I liked it so much. But it tasted. It was a really fresh flavour, but now, as you've said, you've just got that chemical taste and staining as well. I've gone through so many of those reusable plastic water bottles, and you put squash in them, and they're just permanently stained with the colour or the smell because of the chemicals has leached into the plastic, and you just think, I'm not drinking from that again.
I don't drink that much fizzy pop these days. Or I went through a stage of getting like spring water, and then I'd put a dash of whatever squash if I found that squash that I approved of. But I certainly have never been able to drink like, say, Diet Pepsi or Diet Coke, because I just don't find that it tastes like. If I'm going to have Coke, I'll have Coke, and it won't be a thing I have every week. But if I have it, I'll have it properly. I won't have it. It's because I don't think it tastes like what I expect it to taste like.
One of my favourites is elderflower cordial, but so many of them, they just put too much lemon in. I don't why. I mean, I know elderflowers are probably quite expensive, but a lot of them they just over lemon, and it just ruins it for me. So I have to. There's only a couple of brands I can have.
I've made my own. Not recently, but with a when I was with a particular partner, because he lived near a common which had lots of elderberry bushes. Well, I guess it was elderflower, not elderberry. Yeah, so we had to pick one flower.
Because elderberry is something very different.
Yes,
yeah,
that's right. You can make gin and stuff with elderberry.
Yes.
But yeah, so you pick all the flowers, and then you'd have to sort of. I remember we didn't really have a proper thing to sort of
press them
in. So my partner at the time just used a waste paper bin and bleached it and cleaned it, and then we used that as the
distillery.
I don't know. I didn't.
Paul, let's take a big whole field full of elderflower bushes then, and we can make elderflower squash.
Yeah, we'll make sure
no lemon.
We'll make sure we get a proper recipe before we leave.
Yes, let's make sure we take that with us.
Perpetually flowering all year round, so that
yes,
they could somehow be different temperatures, and we trick the bushes to believe that
it's the right season.
Yeah, so staggering across the year. But what foods would you want to bring or have good access to?
Well, I'm much more of a savoury person than a sweet person, so definitely, you know me and crisps. We've said this before, haven't we? Didn't we say something about being able to eat my whole body weight in crisps?
It's in the title sequence.
That would be that would be the number one. But just savoury snacks and salted peanuts and things like that. But with food, I'm quite adventurous. I'm quite open to try new things, and if we did go somewhere with different foods, then I'd want to embrace that and try it.
I have been to a few buffets on other planets, and you have to avoid the you have to speak to a local and ask which ones.
What do they recommend?
Yeah, which do they recommend? Because sometimes they can be a little bit strong for our tastes, or a little bit.
Well, it's just a different culture, isn't it?
Yeah, but no one wants to spit out a mouthful of food at a party, so you want to be ready for it. But I would like access to curries.
Yes,
and
maybe, I can make those. Make those, and
maybe like stews with dumplings and stuff like that. And I'm happy for you to eat as many crisps as you like, but I do expect a little bit more. Maybe a bit of quiche or a bit of or sausage roll or Scotch eggs.
Sausage roll's fine, but I'm not good with eggs.
That's okay. I'll have those ones. It'll be fine.
Save the egg for you.
Yeah. Although, because we went through a stage in London. I don't know if it probably spread all over the country, where you could get sort of posh Scotch eggs, which would be like, or chorizo posh, but they'd be like £5 a go. And you think, blimey.
They did. Yeah, they did. What was it like? Quail's egg in black pudding and that's just nonsense, isn't it?
It's just the expense. I'm not saying I wouldn't try it.
It's just a way of them using some slightly quirky ingredients and charging more.
Yeah, I've got a lonely quail wandering by, and they're like, "Oh, what can we do with that quail's egg?" He's just left there.
Duck egg and like you say, duck egg and chorizo. It just doesn't work, does it? I don't like when they mess around with stuff like that.
I would be happy if we had a good supply of ice cream, but I like a good a good chocolate ice cream is fine, but I don't want everything to be chocolate. I like my fruity ice creams or my sorbets.
What's your favourite fruity ice cream then?
Probably cherry. I do enjoy cherry ice cream, but a good vanilla can be nice. And sometimes going back to those old favourites, but you're so used to having like the cheap vanilla. Maybe if you're at the seaside or something, then when you actually go somewhere where where I've had some,
where it's quite decent.
Yeah, and it's like, wow, this tastes quite different to your bog standard.
So when I was up in Richmond a few weeks ago, we had sea buckthorn flavour, which was one of the nicest flavours I've ever had.
Yeah.
And it's the colour of orange, but it doesn't taste anything like orange. It's quite I suppose the way it's a bit. it's a bit more like cranberry flavour. It's quite tart and quite sour, but you can tell it's still sweet, but and kind of fruity. But it was just really refreshing, really really nice flavour. But it's the colour, because it's bright orange. It's just a bit strange. But I've never seen that before and never had it before.
I don't know what's happened to like the range. The range of flavours you can get from like a supermarket seems to have decreased. I mean, I remember a few years ago where like the Ben and Jerry's ones, you'd get the ones that if you asked me to name like the most popular flavours or the ones I most remember of, say, Ben and Jerry's from 10 years ago, I'd have said the strawberry shortcake one and the cherry Garcia one. And yet I don't even know if you can buy those anymore.
You don't see them. You just don't see them.
It's always
anymore.
like toffee this and chocolate that, and I'm not so keen on those because those are already quite sweet things. And then with the ice cream as well, I prefer. I'm just fruity. That's what I am doing. I'm fruity.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
No, I'd be happy for ice cream as well.
Yeah. And what else? I mean, what is there anything we can sort of say to the listeners who haven't quite reached the grand old age that we are about to reach?
Oh gosh, we should have done a phone in for this, shouldn't we? With questions, we should have got people to ring in and ask us questions about what's it like being 50. What would be your top 10 tips to get to 50? And I don't know. I just think it's
have to do it day by day. And,
yes.
I've never been like an ambitious person, certainly not for my work, not for my official work anyway. So I never sort of, when you see these programs where people are, where do you see yourself in 10 years' time? That sort of thing. I don't think I could ever have said particularly wanted to change anything.
I'm a great believer in there's a whole world out there and nothing stands still. And if you have got something rubbish going on at the moment or something that you don't want to do on a particular day, end of the day, it's finished, it's done. Just go ahead, do it, and then it's over. And once the clock gets to 6 o'clock, it's all finished and you can just move on from it. And I just think people tend to get quite fixated on things that make them depressed, or they don't feel happy about doing it, or maybe it's to do with work and they've got a meeting that they don't want to go to or a piece of work they've got to do. Just coast through it, get it done, because at the end of the day, you'll still have to go to sleep. You'll still wake up tomorrow. Tomorrow is another day. And I just think you live your life. The good things happen, the bad things happen, but something else will come after it.
I think because it is easier to meet people from all over the world, I'm almost, particularly this year, I've been quite keen. If there's been somebody who does a podcast and they're in another country, I almost want to connect with them even more, because not that I don't want to meet more people who live in the UK, but I know quite a lot of people already. I'm quite keen to meet more people from other countries, and maybe who are 10, 20 years younger than me, and to get their view on things. And also, it's almost like the opposite of what we've said about. I like to look back, but I also like to sort of find a new way of looking back that isn't just, oh, wasn't it good back then, sort of thing.
I'm totally with you on that.
Yeah, I don't.
One of the things I found playing Pokemon Go when that was a big thing was meeting a lot of people that were a lot younger and listening to their experiences in life and what they were doing and what their aspirations were. And this is maybe people that were in their early 20s who, if I speak about things that we'd done when we were in our early 20s, they'll probably think it's some museum piece or something from the Victorian era. But I just find that it's interesting talking to younger people and listening to their expectations and what they want to get from life, I think, as well, because it feels that perhaps that's a bit different from, it feels a lot broader than it was maybe when we were that age. Maybe things like the internet and TV on demand and stuff, it makes people realise that there is a bigger world out there, and people can do things and maybe move into another country or doing something that maybe nobody in your family's ever done before isn't such a big deal anymore.
Yeah, I mean, this year I've had quite a lot of guests, like from different parts of Europe, and maybe had them on one episode and kind of thought, well, they probably
You'd like to get them back.
Well, yeah, well, they've almost said, "Oh, well, if you want to do something again soon." So I kind of take them on their word, like, "Yeah, okay, we'll do something again next month or something." And it's been sort of unexpected to have some and people who've said, "Yeah, I'll play a character, or I'll do this," and it at this point, like nearly 8 years into the podcast, as far as when I was doing Sutton Park, I was beginning to sort of think, I want to try and do other things. I'll still do something about it, but I want to write some scripts, and I want to do this. And ultimately, I stretched myself too thinly, and nothing really got. Southern Park kind of fizzled out. The scripts didn't really work out because I was using the same actors that I'd used for Southern Park, and whereas it was fine for improvisation, they didn't necessarily want to learn scripts, and I just think I just did too much, and in the end ended up virtually back at square one, doing nothing, and then having to start from scratch and go, okay, what do I want to do instead? Whereas with the podcast, nearly 8 years on, I just think I'm always finding new things to do, or new people who give me ideas for doing different things. And
has your franchise been renewed then?
I think, in my opinion, yes. I think we should be continuing.
The network executive hasn't called you in for a difficult conversation.
No, not yet. No. Dealey,
very good.
Dealey, you're still happy, aren't you? You're still happy with how things are going. Yeah.
That's good to hear. So here's to another 8 years then.
Yeah, I hope so. Because I don't know what else I'd do anyway. I kind of having a format that's so broad. You can't really complain that you're just doing the same thing, because that's like saying you're tired of being alive, really.
Every episode is different, isn't it?
Yeah. I did an episode recently with a friend in Poland who was a big fan of Power Rangers, because that was the thing that was Power big when we were heading off to university. He was being born and fell in love with Power Rangers. So I learned about Power Rangers. I didn't know about Power Rangers much.
And wasn't it Japanese? And they the program that they had wasn't quite the same as what we had. Is that right?
Yeah, I think
the Americans re-edited it and changed bits and
I think that was the same as some of the cartoons we watched in the 80s, like Battle of the Planets and things. That they were re-edited things from Japan and
wow. So it could have had a completely different plot line, storyline, different thing going on.
Well, I didn't realise that there was like 30-something episodes, 30-something seasons of Power Rangers. I didn't realise it was something that was still an ongoing thing, and that it had gone on continually every year since it began.
I do remember, it's a long time ago now, but someone explaining to me that when you see the shots with the Power Rangers, so in the version that we see, it cuts between them in their coloured outfits, lycra maybe, but you can't really see who they are because they've got masks on.
Yeah.
And then it flicks between that and then also them out of their costumes, living their normal lives. And were they high school kids? And I seem to remember there was these two baddies. There was a fat lad and a slim lad, and they were the two baddies. And there was a lot of interplay between them all. And then you'd got this, was it Rita character? Rita Repulsa?
Mm-hmm. That's more than I know, but yes, quite possibly.
And she interacted with them out of costume and in costume. But then someone explained to me that the bits with them in costume and the bits with the woman, she was a bit like Zelda from Terrorhawks. That was the original Power Rangers, and then the Americans filmed these other shots. So actually, the like the Red Power Ranger, once he took his costume off, that wasn't. That was obviously a Japanese person playing that role, but the Americans refilmed it with an American actor playing that role. So it really was two things mashed together, which that was like, whoa, that really isn't what I thought it was.
Yeah. Matthias can give us a whole a lesson if we ever need more information.
We need that lesson. I need that lesson.
Yeah. And listeners, I think by now you'll realise that we can't really give you any advice about your life. You've got to live your
own life. Yeah. You've got to live your own life, and I think you might have similar. I think probably myself and Paul have got similar experiences, although we didn't know each other for the large part of our lives, but because we were living through the same eras and the same opportunities, and it's a similar pathway, isn't it? Going to school, going to university, getting a home.
Listeners, definitely get yourself a birthday twin. Search out until you find one. Yeah,
and I think something I really value is just having someone that's exactly the same age as me that I can talk to you, and you get it. I haven't got to explain what things mean because you were around at exactly the same moment.
Yeah, but we are lucky that we get on because I've said before we could be completely different types of people as far as personality or just not be able to talk to one another, but we can. So I don't think that was a done deal that we would get on just because.
No.
We're lucky that we are quite similar, or in some ways, often talk.
I was absolutely furious when I first saw you, Paul. What is he doing? Putting on Facebook that it's his birthday. It's my birthday. He's stolen my birthday from me in a photograph. In a photograph with people that I know. In London, celebrating his birthday. Hello. And that was how it all started, wasn't it? I think I probably sent you a really angry message. What are you doing with those people? They're my friends.
No, it's our birthday. That's and those friends are probably long gone now as well.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to have you to share a birthday with. Not just a birthday, but a day of birth as well.
Yes.
And the whole
and obviously we're not actually saying what date the birthday is because of identity fraud concerns.
Yes. But
I hope you all wish us a happy birthday for whenever it was.
Yeah.
Because you might be listening to this. I don't know. How long will you keep your podcast alive for, Paul? People could be listening to this in another 10, 20, 30 years.
I hope it keeps out there as long as it can.
Going off into space forever. A bit like the is it Voyager 2?
Something like that, yeah.
that's gone beyond Pluto and is now I think the batteries have probably run out now though, haven't they?
Well, have a very happy birthday, and
you too, Paul.
And we'll talk again soon. We've got other ideas, and also maybe a bit of fictional stuff going on. If I can get you to, we can't say anything, listeners. It's behind the wall.
Negotiations are taking place.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Okie dokie. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
And it's been.
We'll speak again soon.
Good to talk again.
Yeah,
and for anybody else out there who's having a birthday, happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday. All right. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Say goodbye, Deals.
Bye, Dealey. Bye. Really impressed because I actually have watched the first episode of New Neighbours.
Ooh, Deals, what do you think about
that? Well, I have to be honest, given that I hadn't really been watching Neighbours before it finished, but I did watch the final episode. In fact, I probably watched the final 2 episodes, which completely didn't make sense to me at all, other than Mike and Jane being reunited, and obviously the final bit where you've got all those cast members coming back. Some of them were ghosts and some of them were real. So it was all about the first episode. Spoilers for those who haven't watched it yet, because it is a thing now, isn't it? I suppose it's all about the wedding, isn't it? Building up to it's the morning of the wedding, and everybody's thinking it's all going to happen and stuff. And then you've got that twist. Well, it was a twist to me. Yeah. Maybe I wasn't paying attention properly, but who's marrying who wasn't quite what you thought, and that's the end of the first episode. Yeah, is that right? Or was I just not paying attention?
No, that's right. And you were kind of thinking it was going to be Therese and Paul.
Yes.
Because when you last saw them, they'd sort of got reunited again, and also
because that was how it finished, wasn't it?
Yeah, that they'd reunited, and Toadie and Melanie had actually got married in that last episode. So,
yeah. But what confused me more in the first episode, maybe it was a flashback, because I was a bit overwhelmed by it, I have to be honest. And sometimes I need to watch things twice to actually grasp what's going on. But it felt like there was a scene where Melanie and Toadfish actually were saying that they really loved each other. And then I couldn't really understand at the end why he was marrying someone else.
My mum told me off because she said that was a flashback, and I didn't feel when I watched it that I didn't feel like they were showing it like it was a flashback. They didn't do any,
I didn't
do any wibbly wobbliness or anything.
No, exactly. Or there wasn't like the blurred edge.
Or like the sepia sons and daughters filter or anything. No, I didn't feel like that. I just thought that was happening then. And my mum went, no, it was clear that it was a flashback. I'm like, really?
Right.
I'm sorry.
Oh, well, I didn't pick up on that either, so I don't feel so bad now. You're a proper fan. You were paying full attention, so
I watched it twice, and I still didn't catch it as a flashback. But
I did think I might give it another go.
Well, it's not going anywhere. It'll stay there now. It's not like being on Channel 5 where it's only on there for a month. It's going to be stuck there until they get rid of it.
Something which did really strike a chord with me, thinking about comparing it with other soap operas, given that it's essentially an episode 1, isn't it, of a pickup. A lot of the and perhaps this is because I've not watched it for a long time, and they clearly want some recognisable people in it to carry the stories and to get the viewers back interested. I think what I was going to say was interesting to see how many older cast members there were, because I've associated Neighbours in recent years with, maybe you've still got Harold and a few other people that are older, but the bulk of the cast are like young pretty things that are straight off the beach. Maybe that's Home and Away, but kind of more younger people's lives. And I felt watching that, it was interesting actually seeing a lot of people older than us, and you don't get that. That's not my impression that you get that in a lot of soap operas. That there's more oldies than there are youngsters.
I mean, Harold only really came back in the last few weeks of the old show when it was finishing, because he hadn't been in it for a while. I mean,
do you know what I think? But I have another theory. It's everything shot in HD. And what you can see is everybody's wrinkles. Whereas probably I'm not used to watching 70s and 80s things with really poor image quality. It's been recorded on a VHS and then stuck in an archive for 30 years. Right. The HD cameras really do show up every line and wrinkle.
I can assure you that we're not recording this podcast in HD, don't worry. Not that we would have any problem, because we're just as beautiful as you imagine us to be.
Yes.
Yes.
I gotta go now. Bye.
I want to go with you.
Gotta go. Bye.
Goodbye.
It's been good, but definitely time to come home now.
Wow. Really? No kidding.
Goodbye. Goodbye.
This show is part of the Pride 48 network. Find more shows over at pride48.com.
What's going on now? Oh, it's the Shy Life Podcast.
Let's go.
I have a voice. I have a voice.
You have a voice.
You have a voice. We have a voice.
We have a voice.
Unique voices in podcasting.
UnivazPods.net.
That is so cringe, oh my god.
You're a man of culture as well.
I'm quite interested in there's a plot line with the new family and the son. And
yes, they just turned up, didn't they?
Yeah, and the son is kind of this sort of. It looks like there's an ulterior motive for him, and more of it has been revealed since episode 1. But I won't say any more in case you do watch.
So have they just arrived and they're doing almost like an Airbnb, and they've taken over Jane's house?
But after a few weeks, they decide they may well stay around a bit longer. But
and that was the house that was traditionally the Ramsey house, isn't it?
Yeah,
where Madge and Charlene lived.
Yeah, I've still got my, because I've been watching it for the last 10 years. It still feels very much like another character since then. But yeah, it looks a lot more. It's a lot more chic than it did back in the 80s.
No, I think I'll. It was interesting, and I think I will when I get a chance. I will watch a couple more of them. I might rewatch episode 1 and see if I can spot the where the flashback begins and where it ends.
We might be in a flashback at the moment, Dales, for all we know. We might be appearing. Oh, the listeners don't know that Dealey's here, but he usually is here. Just presume he's here, listeners, because he is. But yeah, I mean, this clip now could be appearing in another episode in about 5 years' time, flashbacking to an episode from the past. We might be in the past, in the future, in the present.
Wow.
You never know with podcasting deals. It's always very complicated.
So when you do flashbacks, do you tend to put echo on them or something to you can't blur the edges?
No, sometimes, but I'll say, oh, do you remember when we did this, listeners? And then I'll do a wibbly wobbly sound effect.
Yes, sound effects, that's it.
But I'm really bad with flashbacks. I can get really self-indulgent. I don't do like the 30-second clip. I'm like, oh, the whole 10 minutes is brilliant. I'm just going to put the whole 10 minutes back. No one's heard this for 5 years anyway, so let's put the whole thing in. Yeah.
So the content could go on forever and ever. It's the gift that keeps on giving.
I know. I'll definitely put a clip into an episode I'm editing at the moment, which I think I put a good 8 minutes flashback because it kind of worked. It worked best as putting the whole scene in. But also I do at the end of the year I do like my favourite clips from episodes. Or although I'm never that well planned. I don't have them written down. I just go into the episode. I don't do a clip from every episode because I do too many episodes a year. But I just go into choice episodes and take a few minutes from each. But it's usually the ridiculous episodes that are harder to find just a couple of minutes. You end up putting 10 minutes in because the whole sketch is difficult.
Otherwise, it's just it needs to have the whole context of it.
I keep thinking, oh, that was funny. Okay, I'll stop it now. Oh no, this bit's funny as well. And I shouldn't be doing it. It's my own show. I shouldn't be going, oh, this is a funny bit. Oh, I like this bit.
People will be complaining it's a repeat.
That happens a lot in America, doesn't it? When they're halfway through a season of Buffy or something, and then they'll say, "Oh, well, the next few weeks are going to be repeats before we come back."
Yeah, definitely. Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I had problems with Stu yesterday, although I don't think it was me. I think it was the other person. And it doesn't help having a Dealey sat in front of your face. But,
hello, Dealey. Hello.
His voice sounds suspiciously like mine, but it's genuinely his.
So, Paul, here we are. We can't skirt around the subject because something significant is going to happen to both of us in a couple of weeks.
Are they acting the show? Oh, no. Oh,
yes. Yes. We've both been given our P45s.
Oh, no. Who's taking over? You're not taking over the show, are you? Oh, dear.
We've been axed, unfortunately, due to cost of living crisis. We've been axed.
Yeah.
Oh, I think that was a wonderful episode, don't you, Toppy?
I sure do.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The best part of the Shy Life podcast is when it ends.
Wow, I love that one. Great show, Paul. That was a good
682.
I've heard that Paul's extremely nimble.
Et voilà.